We start with breaking news out of New York. The United Nations Security Council has voted in favor of the second phase of a U.S. peace plan for Gaza. There were 13 votes in favor of the resolution, with only China and Russia abstaining. The plan calls for a transitional authority in Gaza, which U.S. President Donald Trump would nominally head, as well as an international stabilization force to demilitarize the territory. It also envisions a possible path toward an independent Palestinian state. Now let's bring in Michael Wahid Hanna. He's an expert on U.S. foreign policy and international security with the International Crisis Group think tank. Michael, what do Israel and Hamas say about this resolution?
Well, as you can imagine, they have differing views. I think from Hamas, you see a lot of hesitation. In contrast to the Arab regional states that back this plan, Hamas is concerned that this is effectively something like a throwback to something like an old style colonial administration, and big concern about the ideas in the plan for disarmament, which is something that Hamas has only talked about as a kind of end point for the Palestinian resistance, it says, that is sort of part and parcel of the pathway to Palestinian statehood, and not something that they see as a kind of first step in the process. So I think part of this is confusion about the lack of clarity, which has, I think, fueled further concern on the part of Hamas. Clearly some concern on their part. I think from the Israeli perspective, there is language there that they dislike about the potential pathway for a Palestinian state that they obviously object to. Prime Minister Netanyahu has come out publicly saying that there's not going to be a Palestinian state. But in many respects, this includes language that they are going to like, as with this pathway to disarmament, which has always been high on the Israeli list. And there is not a clear timetable or sequencing for Israeli pullbacks from the strip. So in many respects, I think it does fulfill some of the requirements that the Israelis had for this resolution.
Now, a main point in this resolution is the establishment of an international stabilization force in Gaza. Israel has said it should get to decide which countries are part of that force. Does this resolution give Israel a say?
Well, I mean, I think it's one of these issues that remains quite unclear. We don't know the mandate specifically for the international stabilization force. It is something that I think some of the potential troop contributing countries wanted to see more detail on in the resolution. It didn't happen. I think for countries to contribute troops, there is going to have to be some further agreement as to mandate, rules of engagement. None of these things are perfectly spelled out in the resolution as it stands. And so there is, at the moment, a little bit of informality about the procedures for both governance and security. I would imagine that Israel is going to have a clear say in terms of next steps because of its close working relationship with the United States and the Trump administration specifically. But none of those things are, frankly, spelled out in any specificity in terms of how to define the next steps.
Now, Michael, you mentioned that Israel has some issues with the language about Palestinian statehood in this resolution. How strong is the language? How strong is the path to Palestinian statehood laid out in this resolution?
Well, frankly, it's very weak. I think there was not a mention of Palestinian statehood at all in earlier versions and earlier drafts that circulated. I think the Arab group at the United Nations wanted to see at least some recognition of that possibility. But of course, there is no roadmap for that eventuality, and the parties have never been further apart. So I think there is some mild encouragement that at least the Trump administration was willing to include this reference. They have been somewhat reluctant to give credence to the idea of Palestinian statehood. But there's no real mechanism to make that a reality. So a weak reference nonetheless.
Now that this resolution has passed, what are the next steps here in actually putting together this international mission?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. We don't really know. There is a board of peace that is purportedly going to oversee governance in the Gaza Strip. There is an international stabilization force. There is a lack of clarity about how the board of peace will be selected. Who will be included, how that will relate to day-to-day management of Gaza. There's also supposed to be a Palestinian technocratic committee that is entrusted with day-to-day management of Palestinian affairs. How that relates to the Board of Peace, also unclear. And so there is a lot left to be determined. I think the reason that many of the states that might have objected to the resolution went forward with it is because despite these uncertainties, there is a hope, particularly among the Arab states who backed the resolution, that they will keep the Trump administration engaged. So I think it's a very pragmatic move. The hope being that investing the Trump administration in the process going forward is really the only pathway to keeping momentum going, as we saw with the agreement to the ceasefire in the first place. I think despite all of the uncertainties that surround next steps, whether on governance or security, there is a hope that simply keeping the Trump administration in the United States engaged in the process is really the only way to keep things moving forward.
Okay, a lot to still be worked out here as the United Nations Security Council passes this resolution on Gaza. Michael, Wahid, Hanna from the International Crisis Group, thanks for talking to DW.
Thanks for having me.